we have all stepped up. I noticed the meetings we attend in the money I mentioned, including the Minerals Council Board meeting. People are no more delegating that responsibility. CEOs are at those meetings.
Mining safety in South Africa has reached an important inflection point. After years of hard lessons, the industry, particularly coal, is seeing measurable improvements in safety outcomes. But progress doesn't happen by accident. It reflects leadership choices, cultural change on mine sites, and a renewed focus on zero harm as a lived value, not a compliance slogan. Today, we explore what's driving the shift in coal mining, what has changed at an industry level, and the leadership behavior that has come with that. We'll have that conversation with Mike Teke and Dushendra Naidoo. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Dushendra, I want to start off with you here because, as I mentioned in my intro, we've seen those significant improvements, particularly in coal. From your aspect, from the data that you're looking at, what's driving that improvement?
Thank you for the question. At the Minerals Council, we look at different trends around data. And coal has done really well. The coal sector has done the best out of all commodities. From January to August last year, we had a zero fatality performance. What's driving the trend? I would think it has a lot to do with the disciplines and the safety interventions that's being executed on site. Not to say that this hasn't been done before, but I think there's been a renewed focus on safety elements, especially in light of our Kumbalakaya health and safety strategy. There's also been quite a strong uptake over the years in terms of lessons learned between coal mining companies and also through the South African Collieries Managers Association, where there's in-depth learnings that are shared with all of the management and all of the stakeholders there. So I think that had a lot to do with it, but also there's been a significant increase across the industry in terms of frontline discipline. So those are some of the factors, and I'm sure Mike can also add to that.
Mike, your thoughts, especially when we have to consider some of the day-to-day changes that you may have seen compared to what we've seen in the past, given the long and that difficult history when it came to those safety concerns?
Well, this industry comes from a time when there was an impression created that we're ignoring safety, number one. That mining industry is dangerous, especially if you go underground. It is dangerous inherently, so be careful not to go underground or avoid it. Reality of the matter is that the leadership of the industry has stepped up big time. And when I say leadership has stepped up, let's give an example of the Minerals Council. At Minerals Council level, suddenly we woke up to the fact that we need something called a CEO Zero Harm conversation. And that conversation is a heartfelt conversation where once a month we sit from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., talk about each one, each operation, each commodity, and what is happening. And the most important part there is lessons that are learned from accidents that we see. We don't budget for safety, saying we're targeting so many. We can't target injuries. We said zero harm is important. Then came the issue of Kumbulekaya. Kumbulekaya is important in that every employee must come to work, but the guarantee must be, and it's a difficult word to use, guarantee, to say every employee comes to work but must go home safely. An interesting concept I'll share with you at Seriti. Last year we brought in children, young kids into Seriti to talk to their parents. In other words, online, on TV, on screen, to talk about safety so that the kids must tell their parents or their fathers and their mothers that their sisters, their cousins, we want you back home safely. And that has effectively taken the level of alertness, taken the level of awareness to the next level.
What have the conversations been like between yourselves as the Minerals Council and, of course, as an operator with the labor and labor organizations around, issues around safety? What are they saying? What are some of the concerns they may have in the background that may not necessarily be addressed? Let's start off with you, Dushendra.
So essentially, we deal with all the stakeholders, and we work very closely with the Mine Health and Safety Council, where there's union representation together with employers and the government officials. So that tripartism has really given rise to extensive conversations on safety elements. From the union side, I think some of the key things come alongside when technology is introduced. It does have some interference to the way personnel perceive what that technology can do. And when there's no proper change management, then that's when issues arise. So there needs to be proper change management, proper communication around what those specific systems are intended for. And those are typically the contentions we've seen. And then, of course, sometimes there's regulatory aspects that come into the fore. But through the Mine Health and Safety Council tripartite, we've seen all of the parties and stakeholders working together to actually resolve issues. I think that's been a real positive over the years. I mean, it's phenomenal, especially with, for example, collision prevention.
Yeah.
In the beginning, there was a big resistance to those systems, also from employers' side because of the cost implications, the change that is required to institute such systems, and also being that those systems were not ready for implementation. So there was a massive, outbreak in terms of resistance to the technology being implemented from all the stakeholders. But once some of the mines started implementing, others saw how the benefits, and the unions also, through communication and through engagement, also saw the positivity that these systems actually have the potential to improve things on site. So that's when there was more of a buy-in coming in from the unions. There are other issues as well that come and go, but essentially I think it's all about collaborating with the right parties and the right personnel, the right stakeholders to make the impact that we want.
Let's get your take in terms of how you're dealing with it from a Seriti perspective.
I mean, in terms of
Yeah,
the tripartite alliance that exists as a result of the Mine Health and Safety Council is important. It is critical in that labor, government, and business work together. Number two, historically, you used to have blame, which was central. If there was an accident, no, it's the employer is reckless. Or maybe the employees, or at times government regulation and the like. There's no more of that. We're seeing now the collaboration amongst all of us. I'll give you a good example of legislation well applied. Section 22, Section 23, and 83 of the Mine Health and Safety Act is applicable where employees can stop an unsafe work practice. And historically, people used to say, I can't do it because I get victimized. Today, it has become normal that people can stop and say, I'm not going to do this because it's unsafe. Secondly, the leadership in our businesses to advance technology. Dushendra is talking about things like proximity detection systems, where now we're talking about tracking, where we're finding where each employee is underground. It's not because we're policing people. We are saying in terms of safety, you need to know where each employee is, how many people you have, as an example, underground in a section, and what are the conditions underground. I must tell you that legislation is not legislation to police. You need legislation because we are a country of rule of law. But beyond that, we have to have leadership from labor, from business and government collaborating.
I want to stay with you here because many of the leaders, many of the counterparts are going to be watching this interview, and they may have concerns around their own operations where they want to, get towards zero harm. From your perspective, from the learnings you may have come across, even the conversations you're having, what are some of the systems or critical controls they need to be thinking about or have in place if they want to inch closer and closer to that zero harm that you and I have been talking about?
The interesting thing I've observed in the Minerals Council, I've been a member of the Minerals Council for years. Leadership within the Minerals Council, we have all stepped up. I notice the meetings we attend in the morning I mentioned, including the Minerals Council Board meeting, people are no more delegating that responsibility. CEOs are at those meetings. It is chaired by a CEO and it's rotating amongst all of us. 3, the initiative, suddenly we are starting to see the cross learnings that you see per commodity. Platinum people will tell you that they've identified something that works for them. We no more have barriers where you say, in coal it won't work. In coal, you take that, it's a lesson for you. Gold is doing the same thing, coal is doing the same thing. We are seeing that cross-pollination of lessons. But for me, what has become critical for the industry is to start to say we are an industry that is driving zero harm, not because it's coal, not because it's platinum, not because it's gold or chrome or iron ore. All leaders are stepping up now. And you can see that this meeting is taken seriously. You have to be present.
Your thoughts, Dushendra?
Yeah, I think in terms of critical controls, that's a big area for us. And that's one of the pillars of our version 2 strategy. It's on critical control management and specifically risk management. So we are looking at overhauling all of that knowledge and simplifying a lot of that because it's very complex. Critical control management is a very complex subject. We're trying to simplify it such that the knowledge gets to all personnel from the face right up to the leadership. And it exists in the industry, but there's also misconceptions as to what critical control management is, control verifications. Some of our leading members, like Seriti and others, have executed this to a very, very high proficiency. But we do see this lacking in certain areas. Not to say that it's missing completely, just that it's not executed with the discipline we want. And that's changed over the years. So as a Minerals Council, we've developed bow ties, which speak to risk profiles for different focus areas. So if you look at transport and machinery, if you look at fall of ground, which are some of the main agencies that contribute to incidents, we've developed industry bow ties, collaborating with the industry experts through the coal sector, the gold, and other commodities, to see how we can actually make those bow ties relevant for the industry today and with the risk profiles that's existent today. And those have to be continuously updated. Those bow ties have a massive effect on how we manage controls and how we verify them to ensure that those controls are still relevant. Because as time progresses, controls do change. Some of them are negligible. They don't really work. And critical controls, working with the ICMM, has actually enabled us to get that knowledge and to also share that with the rest of the industry.
Speaking of knowledge sharing, earlier on, we were having conversations around how, the mining industry is, of course, some of the projects are multi-decade and they move across different jurisdictions, and there's that need for regional integration and learning from each other. Here we're talking about a body where we've got a lot of the South African miners who sit with you and you'll discuss, and you seem to be on the same page. But there may be other mining operators who are not necessarily part of South Africa. They sit in other jurisdictions, other countries. And they want to learn from what you guys discuss at the meetings in terms of lessons learned, what to avoid, and those types of pitfalls. Do you get the sense that perhaps there is still a message out there that strong performance doesn't necessarily relate to strong safety standards, or are we all on the same page, not just here in SA, but with other mining companies around the world, that we can have both? We can have strong mining performance and strong safety standards going basically in tandem. Do we all agree with that, or are we still somewhat on a different page here? I don't know if you want to take this.
So, Dushendra has touched on the bow ties, on critical controls. There are quite a number of programs. Kumbulekai, we can mention quite a number of these. And we can use different measures, lost time injury frequency rate, different. The critical part is lessons are shared now. I'll give you an interesting example. Australia, we've got operations, we've got South African companies that have operations in Australia. We have South African companies that have operations in South America. We have South African companies on the Minerals Council who have operations in different jurisdictions globally. that transfer of skill, that transfer of knowledge, that transfer of programs is happening intensively. You take a company like Sibanye. They have operations in South Africa. They have operations in the US. They are sharing the learnings that they pick up globally wherever they operate, and we apply those in South Africa. There's no more an environment where one company would say, these are dedicated to my company, therefore I cannot share with anybody or I cannot learn from anyone.
Okay. Your thoughts?
Yes, I think Mike has put it very nicely. Just to add to that, we also work very, very closely with MIASA. And MIASA is deals with all of the different chambers across the African continent. So in terms of Africa, we also share a lot on what we've done on safety and on health and other interventions through the MIASA Association, but also specifically to certain chambers. Like I can give you an example, the Zambian Chamber of Mines. We attend the the health and safety conferences that are located in different regions. And we share some of our work with those entities. And we also absorb from them a lot of the leading practices and good practice that they have executed on site, which we then consolidate and utilize for our own work. South Africa is certainly leading in terms of many, many areas. Mike has mentioned Australia. In terms of collision prevention, we have leading documentation through the Minerals Council that's produced at the council offices on collision prevention systems in terms of functional and technical performance requirements. So that's leading in terms of because we have such a regulatory environment, we had to go ahead of the pack and start producing that. We have shared that also with the immersed groupings and other groupings in the rest of the world. There's also the ICMM that we work closely with. There are disparities when it comes to non-members, and we often also share what we have with non-members because we work for the industry at large. So when there are incidents on non-member sites, we try to assist where we can, and we look at what actually resulted in those incidents, what were the contributing factors. So very often we do try to support, and it's just that they are not formally part of our programs, but where we can support, we do.
Okay.
It's a matter of the best interests of the country and of the mining industry at large.
And do they want to be members? Do they want to collaborate more with you guys? How does it work when they bring you on board to sort of assist in certain aspects where ordinarily if they were members, then we'd all be on the same page?
Because our time is limited and dedicated purely for members due to that commitment, it is very difficult to give all of our energy to those mines. But where we can support in terms of information, in terms of knowledge sharing, we do that quite freely. We've generated compendiums of information on safety and health, and we freely disseminated that. Australia Immersed would tell you about that. We've freely given that out to the rest of the world. Also the ICMM, we are working very closely on leading indicators with, because they are also doing similar things, and they've seen similar patterns on their membership in terms of incidents. So working hand in hand with those associations also helps promote the work and also share the learnings and institute those learnings on different operations across the world.
Mike, Dushendra mentioned something which was quite interesting, that oftentimes when you go to a lot of these conferences, you have people who share some of the leading best practice and what they've implemented, what works and what doesn't work. How easy or difficult is it to be able to try and implement something that is a new leading best practice or a new way of approaching things on your own operations? Do you trial it in a particular part of the mine or a different part of the operation before it's rolled out? How easy or difficult is it to be able to say?
Historically, you used to have people who had the idea that it's not invented here.
Okay.
Things have changed. We are saying a specific company in the country has got interesting statistics. The statistics are interesting in that A, 0 injuries. A, they haven't had a fatality for the past 10 years. Go and find out. And we send our teams to go and learn. And when they come back with ideas that create a sense of ownership, that this is what I saw and I want to do it at home. So that sharing is happening. But historically, if you imposed it,
Yes.
people become resistant to saying, are we not doing good enough? Are we not good enough that you go and fetch something out there, which they normally call it, it's not invented here. No. These days we're saying, go and learn. There's best practice in company A, and this is what we've seen. And I must confess, in the Minerals Council, I can single out a number of companies where, as the CEO of Seriti, I look there at those companies and say, my God, they are doing a fantastic job. And I'd love to learn from them.
As the CEO of Seriti, how easy or quick do you react when we've implemented something? We're about a year into it, but it's not giving us the results we thought it would, even though we went and we learned from somewhere else. How quickly or agile is your team in being able to change that or fix it or say, maybe this is not working, let's approach it differently?
It's quick.
Okay.
It's agile, and you cannot repeat the same thing, expect different results, not unless you're not okay mentally. We find ourselves in a situation where we say, immediately we notice that things are not changing, stop and reassess and start again. That's basically the route that we take all the time.
Given everything that we've discussed here, when we sit across the table a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, what is the one thing that you would have hoped changed or we got better, or that perhaps if we are not paying too much attention to at this point, we're definitely paying attention to it at that time? What's that one thing that you're looking out for from your different perspectives? Let's start with you, Mike.
The big thing for me is I no more look at safety alone, only. I'm looking at health, wellness. And the big story for me into the future, it's mental health. And unfortunately, you said one. I would have added the second and say diet.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's important for me. Our employees, our colleagues, people we work with, we must ensure that we look at what we eat and how is our mental state going into the workplace.
Before I move on to Dushendra, have you started those programs where the mental health and the diet aspect has been?
Yes.
How are you doing it?
I'll give you an example. I am watching people's diet.
Okay.
I'm a proponent of a certain type of noise about diet, and I'm not going to mention until where I'll face commercial challenges, but I've made noise about certain things. Secondly, on mental health, we have something called Masoise program in the mining industry. I was the chairman of Masoise the previous year, actually 2024. And I made sure and supported all the medical people in that program. In other words, our doctors sit on that program called Masoise, which is a Xhosa word, you know it. In the Masoise program, we drove mental health. And I pushed hard that we need to start to understand. When I say mental health, I'm not saying people are not normal, no. I'm saying your state of mind. Are you fatigued? Are you tired? Is there anything worrying you? You cannot go and operate a very sophisticated piece of equipment that is really risky and dangerous when your mental state is not okay. How do we help you?
Okay, Dushendra?
Yeah, in terms of the step change that I want to see, I think that's why we designed the version 2 strategy. I would like to see a more of an acceleration towards zero harm, first and foremost. That's our vision. And I concur very much with what Mike is saying on mental health. I think that is absolutely critical because we've seen that in the industry. Mental health is not spoken about. It wasn't spoken about after COVID as much as we would have wanted it to. But now it's improved and it's increased in terms of the awareness. We do see fatigue as a massive issue at the moment, and that's throughout the sector. And it's very much to do with communication and how we manage fatigue. I was talking to a briefing earlier on the fact that many, many years back, we had haul trucks with drivers driving off edges of cliffs and quarries and things because they were so fatigued that they would actually fall asleep at the wheel. And at that time, there was an innovation from the CSIR with safety glasses that detected your sleeping patterns and things and would give you a warning. We'd like to see more of these technologies also implemented in terms of managing fatigue. And there's a lot internationally as well that we're looking at as a Minerals Council to leverage on to improve on that area. And then, of course, we want to see all of the core pillars of Kumbalakaya rolled out. And it's starting to, it's going really well. We got this approved by our board last year, and we had two cross-company CEO VFLs, one at Glencore Roven and one at Seriti's Kuthala Colliery. So those have proven to be really great sessions. From the outset of the sessions, you can see the collaboration. You can see people wanting to share as leaders on interventions that they've instituted on their sites, and others also wanting to adopt them. You spoke about adoption. We also, our mining companies, our members, the mining industry, have invested in the MOSH team. MOSH is the Mining Industry Occupational Safety and Health Department within the Minerals Council. And they are very active in making sure that leading practice is identified on site, it's documented, it's piloted on sites, and then it's widely adopted through the industry. We've seen some positive results in terms of permanent netting. We've seen in terms of illumination as well. And we'd just like to see more companies, members and non-members, adopting these practices and just accelerating that motion towards zero harm. I think that is our mindset in terms of safety and health.
With that, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. For more mining insights, you can go to miningindaba.com.